welcome to Blackbriar Gaming. Today, we're going to discuss the Mechanicum. I was specifically waiting for a FAQ for this faction before recording an analysis of their rules, as there are so many awkward and obvious mistakes in their rulebook. Well, now we have the FAQ, and we have their Legacies document, we can provide an informed analysis of the faction. After much complex deliberation, I've divided my analysis by those units that make the Magos happy, and those that make Magos sad. A quick note before we get into it, a subscribe and a like really helps us reach a bigger audience. So if you enjoyed the video, please hit those buttons down below. Also, be sure to check out our affiliate link in the description. So, the Mechanicum. It's no secret that the Heresy community, and predominantly Mechanicum players, were not happy with the 2nd edition rules for the robots in red. Now, I think there are plenty of reasons for this, and I'll touch on a bunch of this video, but in all fairness, the Mechanicum in Heresy's 1st edition were just a bit much. Forge World demonstrated an ongoing inability to balance non-Legion factions, and the Mechanicum were no exception. It was largely up to Mechanicum players to self-regulate, or otherwise just decimate any Legion players they came up against. In this humble 30k gamer's opinion, the Mechanicum was simply too powerful. GW have come into 2nd edition with a pro-Legion agenda that is both not surprising and not unappreciated. While it does admittedly hurt those players of non-Legion factions who poured blood, sweat, and tears into their armies, it also ensures the game is squarely centered on the Legions, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. Did Mechanicum get done dirty? Potentially. Are they playable in 2nd edition? I certainly think so. Let's dive deeper and see what aspects of the units in the new books make the modern Magos happy and which parts disappoint. So, sad Magos. The Automata unit type can't natively make reactions. Now, reactions are just so important in 2nd edition. I'm personally a fan of the mechanic, but you have to understand that you can't make the same decisions that you made in 1st edition in 2nd edition because reactions are just everything, right? In your opponent's turn, they make such a considerable difference to the game. You have to consider them in all the tactical decisions you make, and they can have a really big impact on what lives, what dies, and how you lose or win the game. Now, Automata, while they can't natively make reactions, there are ways to enable them to make reactions. From my understanding, you either need a Magos within 12 inches with the Artificia Cybernetica Arcana, which could result in the majority of other Arcanas not seeing use, which is a bit of a shame. Or you need to take Archmagos Anakaris Scoria, there we go, the names in this book, I tell you what, who I think will be really popular, and subsequently restrict army list building. If he's in every single list, it's going to get a bit old, a bit fast, because he's certainly the best way to give Automata units reactions. Now, there might be some other ways to unlock reactions for Automata in the book. I couldn't personally find it. Please let me know in the comments below if I've missed something. But overall, just a couple of ways to give Automata reactions. It's locking you into certain arcana and certain characters, which I don't love, because there's so many other options in this book that you could be choosing, but then you're giving up reactions for really big parts of your army. Unless you go down the route of not including Automata, but Automata are kind of the best thing that Mechanicum have going for them in a lot of ways. So, bit of a shame. That results in a sad Magos. Now, happy Magos. The Logic of Victory Warlord trait is absolutely nuts. Have a read of it. Unless I'm reading it wrong, you get an extra reaction in every single phase of your opponent's turn. We're talking about 6 reactions in your opponent's turn, potentially. That is just insane, and all you have to give up is shooting, which you don't even really care about if your Warlord happens to be running around and battlesmithing all your robots. That's really cool. On top of that, the +1 weapon skill / ballistic skill, I don't know where the weapon skill is actually useful in reaction. I might be missing something, but it is what it is. But +1 ballistic skill for the unit that the Warlord is in for those reactions is also amazing. You get +3 initiative and +3 movement for those reactions that use those stats. That's nuts. It's so good. That unit is going to be doing all of the things and whatever it wants. You want to put your Warlord in a nice big beefy unit. And just that can shoot, that can move around. Well, it can move around. It can do whatever it wants once the Warlord's in there with this trait. So the Logic of Victory Warlord trait is really good. So that results in a happy Magos. Now, sad Magos. Tech Thralls are almost useless. Sure, they are super cheap. We're talking 3 points a model once you paid your unit tax. But without the ability to get fearless and with a leadership of 6, a stray smattering of bolter shots is just going to send them running from any objective you're trying to hold, which is kind of their only reason for existing. Now, the main reason this hurts so much, I mean, tech thralls, they should probably be kind of useless, that's alright, but the reason it hurts so much is that they were just so good in first edition. So many Mechanicum players invested in multiple units of these things. And these first edition armies that relied on thralls now need significant additions to be playable, which would probably leave a sour taste in any Magos' nutrient receptor. So I get why there's a bunch of sad Magos out there about the thralls. They probably have 60 of them sitting around that they can no longer do really anything with except die. Happy Magos. Thanators are still excellent. Now, while they struggle a little in combat with their weapon skill of 3, their absolutely obnoxious shooting and their intense survivability more than makes up for it. In particular, the plasma mortar on these Thanators are just so good. It has the ability to shoot twice, which is so brutal. It's essentially the firepower of 2 Whirlwind Scorpius on a much more survivable platform. You add in some Nuncio Foxes to your army, and those large blast templates are going to be hitting pretty much where you want and absolutely tearing apart Legion armies. We're talking about, instant death on most Marines, rending on 4+, ignoring cover so you can't shroud. It's just a fantastic weapon on a fantastic unit. So Magoses are going to be super happy that Thanators are still killing it. Sad Magos. Castellax have taken a pretty significant hit. They're in a bit of an awkward place. With only weapon skill 3, they're going to struggle to do any serious damage against Marine in combats, because for the most part, you're only hitting on 5s, which just really reduces the damage output you're doing once you're in combat. And unless you're giving them Siege Wreckers, which is not cheap at 15 points a pop, they're going to absolutely bounce off anything with a 2+ save. Now, I see Castellax as a predominantly shooting unit in this edition, able to do some decent damage with either the Multi-Melter or the Darkfire upgrades, once again, that aren't that cheap, but they can, in a pinch, do some work in combat against weakened units, that's the Castellax, if they need to. So, mostly use them for shooting, and if you need to get them in combat to finish a unit off, or just, they're at least not that tempting to charge with a bunch of units in the game, they can still do work. Now, notably, shooting-focused Castellax really suffer from the inability to make reactions, and that's the big one here. So if you're planning on running them, it's almost mandatory to babysit them with Magos, rocking the Artificia Cybernetica Arcana. Now you can put that on the lower version of the Magos, not the high whatever version, that's the 70.1. So yeah, you can get some cheap Magos running around, making sure your Castellax are actually doing work, but the fact that you have to pay 75+ points to make that unit really workable, it's not doing them any favors. They did come down in points from their first edition absolute beast unit that they were, but is it enough to make them playable? We'll have to wait and see. Now, unfortunately, when comparing, and this is the kicker, right? When comparing 3 Castellax to 2 Contempted Dreadnoughts, which is comparable in points and purpose, the Castellax are really falling short. Saying that, thank goodness, I guess. We all know Dreadnoughts are overpowered. That's the last time I'm going to refer to Dreadnoughts in this analysis. It's not fair to compare units to them because they are too good and we all know it. So, but, Castellax that are really fulfilling that same role, it's just so blatantly obvious when it comes down to points and purpose. The Contempted Dreadnoughts outshine them utterly. Now, what's resulting in Happy Magos? The Krios battle tanks are really good. So both weapons for the Krios battle tank are great choices, and for a very nice points cost too. The lightning cannon comes with an AP3 large blast, which is a rarity in 2nd edition, and it has shred, and it has rending 4+. It's a fantastic weapon, and it's rare to see those kind of stats all coming together in this edition. The Pulsar Fusel puts down an outrageous 4 Strength 9 AP2 ordnance shots. That cause pinning just for good measure, so that's a great choice as well. And you're putting it on it's on a 150 point tank, which is relatively survivable. So I'm a big fan of the Krios. I don't think I'd be taking a Mechanicum army without at least a couple of these tanks in it. Sad Magos. The Alatax and the Ursarax are just super average. We're into fast attack now. At 150 points, the Alatax just does not deliver. You're absolutely paying through the nose for its U-turn jump booster, but if you put it to good use, you're then reaching outside your Magos reaction, enabling Bubble and the almost mandatory Cortex controller. So having a really fast, big Automata like this isn't actually something you really want, because now you're outside of your ability to make reactions and you're charging the closest enemy unit and shooting them without really any kind of tactical options. The L attacks goes down to missile launchers like it's no one's business and will struggle to find a place in Mechanicum lists. Never forget that crack grenades auto hit at strength 6 AP3. Ugh, even a tactical, and they're on all Marines, not all Marines, almost all Marines. Even a tactical squad is going to give one of these a hard time in combat. Your damage output is also pretty lackluster, with power blades only being AP4 and breaching 5+, and the 20 points to go to the AP3 arc scourges seems like a lot on an already overpriced model. Just a subpar unit in every way. Same, what's resulting in that sad Magos, the Ursarax cohort, which used to be pretty fantastic, with its 4+ arm save, is going to just fall apart to any decent amount of shooting. Even if you get across the board, you're going to lose at least one charging into a 10-man tactical squad on an Overwatch reaction, and that's the real difference from 1st edition to 2nd edition here. You just need your units to be more survivable, because your opponent's going to get so many more chances to shoot at them with a shooty unit that you want to be charging. They're also absolutely going to bounce off anything with a 2+ save, with not nearly enough tax to take advantage of their Lightning Claw's rending, and, Terminators have 2 wounds now, so they're not going to do nearly as much as they did in 1st edition, and they're pretty average. As an additional insult to injury, and this is what I'm talking about with Terminators here, only 1 Ursarax for every 3 models is now able to take the Power Fist combo. In 1st edition, you could kit out all your Ursarax with Power Fist, so this is really leaving those 1st edition Mechanicum players with a bunch of miniatures, and they would have had a bunch of them, I assure you, because they were great. Leaving them with a bunch of miniatures, they need to either take apart, leave on a shelf, or buy a whole bunch more Ursarax to flesh out their squads. It's not a great feeling. Happy Magos, on the flip side, your other 2 fast attack choices, the Vorax and the Voltrax, are very playable. Vorax are less than half the points cost of their big brother, the Alatax we're just talking about, is a bit average, but just almost as survivable, and with only 1 less wound and 1 less pip, there we go, of toughness, which is great. On top of this, they're putting out an almost identical amount of damage with the same close combat weapon loadout and only 1 less strength, which is still wounding most Legion units on 2+. I don't know why you would ever choose the Alatax over a unit of Vorax. With Fleet 2 and a cheeky scout move at the start of the game, they're going to be getting across the table really nice and quickly too, so you don't have to worry about them trudging along. They're pretty fast. Now, the Voltrax, they're a fun unit. They were great in 1st edition. They're still pretty good. I think they've been toned down a little, but still super useful in the right game. It really depends on how prevalent we're going to see Land Raiders become. It all comes down to their disruption rule and the automatic glancing hits they can do. Now, a couple of these bad boys will have a real good go at putting down a Land Raider in a single turn with their Arc Blasters. Ballistic Skill 5 with Night Vision is the icing on the cake here that gives them some real reliability. And that wraps up the big winners and the big losers of the new Liber Mechanicum. The remainder of the units in the book, and there's plenty more in there, and there's plenty in the Legacies document as well. Noting the Legacy documents falls a bit flat, because of course it does. The remainder of the units in the book, they're entirely playable, neither overly impressive or disappointing. The book itself, yeah, it's a bit of a mess. It's got multiple layers of special rules that seem needlessly complicated, and a layout that isn't overly friendly, but I feel like we're getting into the kind of minor quibbles territory now. Overall, I think the Mechanicum will do just fine in 2nd edition, but it's going to be a far greater adjustment for Mechanicum players than it was for Legion players. Those star units from 1st edition have been toned down, and there's just not as many options as there used to be. I'd be surprised if there's many Mechanicum players out there that can put their 1st edition forces on the table and still consistently perform against the majority of Legion armies that we're seeing. They're going to need some updates, they're going to need to buy some new units. 2nd edition Mechanicum are just a different force to what 1st edition was. I hope you've enjoyed the video and taken something away from it. Importantly, make sure to keep rolling those dice and getting hyped for Heresy.